The space station floated in the darkness between stars like a silver wheel spinning slowly against the black. Station Orion 7 was home to the Galactic Military Academy, the most famous school for young soldiers in all the known universe. Students came here from 43 different planets. They came to learn how to fight, how to lead, and how to win wars. Sat in the back row of classroom 7B, she was 19 years old, small in size, with black hair that fell past her shoulders. Her eyes were dark and calm, like deep water that never moved. She watched everything. She said almost nothing. Around her sat students from species that humans had only learned about 12 years ago. They were the biggest. They stood over 2 meters tall, with 4 arms and skin like gray stone. They believed that strength was everything. Next to them sat the beings made of living crystal who thought in pure mathematics. The hollow were insects the size of dogs, with minds that worked faster than any computer ever built. And then there were the humans, just 4 of them in a class of 60 students. Looked at her fellow human cadets. There was who sat 2 seats away from her. He was tall and thin, with nervous eyes that moved too quickly. He bit his fingernails when he was worried, which was most of the time. There was a girl from who never stopped talking about home. And there was a quiet boy who spent all his time in the simulation rooms. Humans were new to the galaxy. When Earth's first ships had reached beyond their solar system, they found a universe already full of ancient civilizations. The Galactic Confederation had existed for 10,000 years. Humans were like children who had just learned to walk, entering a room full of adults. The other species did not hate humans. That would require them to care. Instead, they simply looked past them, like they were not really there. Humans are clever, the students would say, but they are weak and they die easily. Humans think slowly. The hollow would click in their strange language, but they try hard. Humans are interesting, they would admit, in the way that primitive things can sometimes be interesting. Heard all of this. She wrote it down in her notebook. She did not argue or complain. She simply watched and waited. The classroom door opened, and Professor Helm walked in. He was old and from many battles. One of his 4 arms was mechanical, a replacement for one lost in some ancient war. He looked at the class with eyes that had seen too much death. "Today we study the siege of Hollow Prime," he announced. His voice was deep like thunder. The battle where 6,000 ships held against 60,000 for 40 days. The Hollow students clicked with pride. It was their greatest victory. "Who can tell me why the defenders won?" Professor Helm asked. A student raised a crystal arm. "Superior defensive positioning," she said. "Mathematical analysis shows their formation was optimal." A student spoke next. "Strength of will, they refused to surrender." Professor Helm nodded slowly. "Both correct, but incomplete." He looked around the room. His eyes passed over the human students without stopping. The defenders won because they understood something the attackers did not. War is not about strength alone. It is about making your enemy fight the battle you want, not the battle they want. Wrote this down. She underlined it twice. After class, caught up with her in the corridor. The hallways of Station Orion 7 were wide and bright, filled with students from dozens of worlds. A group of walked past and had to press against the wall to avoid being stepped on. He said, "You never speak in class, you never answer questions. The professors are going to think you're not smart enough." Kept walking, "Let them think what they want." "But you know more than most of them," insisted. "I've seen your test scores. You're in the top 10%. Why do you hide it?" Stopped walking. She turned to face her friend. For a moment, something old and patient moved behind her eyes. "On Earth," she said quietly, "there is a saying, the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. So you're hiding." "I'm waiting." She started walking again. "There's a difference." Hurried to keep up. Waiting for what? Did not answer. That night sat alone in her small room. The room had a window that looked out at the stars. Earth's sun was out there somewhere, a tiny yellow dot among millions of others. She could not see it, but she knew it was there. She opened her computer and began to study. Not the official lessons, she had finished those days ago. Instead, she studied old battles, ancient wars from Earth's history, the way small armies had defeated big ones, the way weak nations had survived against strong enemies. She studied how the Koreans had used turtle ships against the Japanese. She studied how the Vietnamese had fought against the Americans. She studied how the Finnish had held against the Soviets in the Winter War. She found patterns. Small forces won when they refused to fight the way their enemies expected. They won by being patient. They won by making the enemy come to them. They won by being willing to lose battles in order to win wars. The galaxy's military academies did not teach these lessons. They taught that bigger fleets always beat smaller fleets. They taught that superior technology always won. They taught that war was a science, and the side with better numbers would always be victorious. Thought this was foolish. War was not just science. War was also art. War was also will. War was also the ability to keep fighting when everything said you should give up. Her computer beeped. A message from, "Did you hear? A special examiner is coming next week. Commander from the Dominion Fleet. They say he's never lost a battle." Read the message twice. She had heard of Commander. Everyone had. He was famous for crushing rebellions, destroying pirate fleets, and winning impossible victories. He was also famous for something else. He hated humans. Not in the dismissive way most aliens did. Actively believed that humans were a mistake, that the Confederation should never have let such a primitive species join. He had said so publicly, many times. Closed the message. She looked out at the stars again. Something was coming. She could feel it. The same way her grandmother had always felt when a storm was approaching, a change in the air, a pressure in the chest, a quiet voice that said, "Prepare yourself." She opened her studies again. This time she searched for everything she could find about Commander, his battles, his tactics, his victories. If she was going to face a storm, she wanted to know exactly what kind of storm it was. Outside her window, the stars continued to burn in the darkness. They did not care about the small human girl studying alone in her room. They did not know that history was about to change. But history often starts with small things. A single stone can start an avalanche. A single spark can start a fire. And sometimes, a single quiet girl can change what the entire galaxy believes about her species. Studied until her eyes grew heavy. Then she slept, and in her dreams she saw fleets of ships moving through the darkness like schools of fish. She saw fire and light and the cold mathematics of destruction. And somewhere in those dreams she smiled. Commander arrived on Station Orion 7 like a dark cloud rolling across a clear sky. His ship was a Dominion warship, painted in colors of blood and rust. It docked at the station's military port, and within an hour, everyone knew he was there. Stood with the other cadets in the main assembly hall. The hall was enormous, built to hold thousands of students from dozens of species. Today, only the senior tactical class was present, 60 cadets standing in neat rows, waiting. The doors at the far end of the hall opened. Commander walked in. He was tall for his species, nearly 2 meters of scaled muscle and cold intelligence. His scales were dark red, the color of dried blood. His eyes were yellow with black slits for pupils, and they moved across the room slowly, taking in everything. He wore the uniform of the Dominion Fleet, black fabric with silver edges, decorated with medals from 100 victories. Behind him walked 2 officers from the academy looking nervous. They had good reason. Was not just a commander, he was a legend, and legends did not follow rules. Stopped at the front of the hall. He looked at the cadets for a long time without speaking. The silence grew heavy, pressing down on everyone like a physical weight. Finally he spoke. His voice was like stones grinding together. "I have been asked to examine your tactical abilities," he said, "to test whether you are worthy of serving in the Confederation's fleets." He began to walk slowly along the front row of cadets. A student stood at attention, trying not to shake. A student's crystal body flickered with nervous light. A hollow student's wings buzzed quietly. "I have fought in 37 major engagements," continued. "I have destroyed over 200 enemy vessels. I have never lost a battle. Do you know why?" No one answered. "Because I understand what war truly is." Stopped walking. "War is not about fairness. War is not about honor. War is about winning. Only winning. Everything else is weakness." He turned and looked directly at the 4 human cadets standing in the back row. Felt his eyes on her. They were cold, like looking into the eyes of a snake. She did not look away. "I see we have humans in this class," said. The way he said the word humans made it sound like a disease. "I have heard interesting things about your species." He walked toward them, his boots clicking against the metal floor. The other cadets moved aside, creating a path. "I have heard," said, stopping in front of the human cadets, "that humans believe they are special, that they believe their minds can make up for their weak bodies, that they believe they can outthink species that have been fighting wars for thousands of years." Was trembling, had gone pale, stared at the floor. Stood still, her face showed nothing. Leaned closer to her. His breath smelled like copper and meat. "I have heard that humans call themselves clever. Tell me, little human, do you think you are clever?" "I think cleverness can be useful," said quietly. "Commander." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, interest, anger. It was impossible to tell. "Useful," he repeated. "An interesting word. Let me show you something about usefulness." He turned and walked back to the front of the hall. His officers activated a large holographic display. It showed a map of space, a nebula filled with swirling gases and electromagnetic storms. "This is the Battle of Nebula," announced. "One of the most famous defensive engagements in history. A small fleet held against a force 3 times its size." The cadets watched as the display showed the battle playing out. Blue dots representing the defenders, red dots representing the attackers. The blue dots scattered, reformed, attacked, and scattered again. "This battle is often studied as an example of defensive excellence," said, "but I see it differently. I see it as an example of how a larger force can fail through overconfidence." He turned off the display. "I propose a demonstration," he said, "a simulation of this battle. One of you will command the defending fleet. I will command the attacking fleet." Murmurs ran through the cadets. Fight against Commander, in a simulation. It was impossible. He would destroy anyone who tried. "But I want to make it interesting," continued. A cruel smile crossed his scaled face. "I want one of the humans to face me." The hall went silent. "You claim to be clever," said, looking at the human cadets. "You claim that your minds are your weapons. Prove it. One of you, step forward and face me in battle." Was shaking so badly that could hear his teeth clicking together. Looked like she might cry. Had closed his eyes. Looked at her friends. She looked at the other cadets, aliens from 40 different worlds, all watching the humans with expressions that ranged from pity to amusement. She looked at Commander, standing at the front of the hall like a monster from an old story. And then she stepped forward. "I will face you, Commander." The murmurs became gasps, his yellow eyes fixed on her with new intensity. "You," he said, "the quiet one who sits in the back, the one who never speaks in class." "Yes, Commander." "Do you understand what you are doing, little human? This will not be a game. I will not show mercy. When I defeat you, and I will defeat you, everyone in this hall will see exactly how foolish humans are to think they belong among us." Met his gaze without flinching. Her heart was beating fast, but her voice was steady. "I understand, Commander." Then you are either very brave or very stupid. Smile widened, showing teeth like knives. Either way, this will be entertaining. He gestured to his officers. Prepare the simulation room. We will begin in 1 hour. As the hall began to empty, grabbed arm. Are you crazy? He whispered urgently. That's Commander, he's never lost, he's going to destroy you. Maybe said. Then why would you volunteer? Looked at her friend. For a moment the calm mask she always wore slipped, and he saw something burning underneath, something fierce and old and patient. Because someone had to, she said, and because I've been waiting for this. Waiting for what? Turned and began walking toward the simulation room. Over her shoulder, she said, for a chance to show them what humans really are. Watched her go. He had known for 2 years. He had thought he understood her, quiet, shy, preferring to stay invisible. Now he realized he had never understood her at all. 1 hour later, the simulation room was full. Every cadet in the senior class had come to watch. Word had spread through the station, and officers and teachers had gathered as well. Even the station commander was there, watching from a special viewing platform. Sat at one control station. Commander sat at another. Between them, a massive holographic display showed the nebula, a storm of purple and blue gases, filled with electromagnetic interference that would blind sensors and disrupt communications. The rules are simple, announced the simulation officer. Commander commands the attacking fleet, 90 vessels. Cadet commands the defending fleet, 30 vessels. The battle ends when one fleet is destroyed or surrenders. Looked across the display at, his eyes were hungry. Any last words, little human? His hands rested calmly on her controls. She looked at the nebula, at the positions of her ships, at the vast enemy fleet waiting to destroy her. Just one, Commander, she said. Oh, what is that? Smiled a small, quiet smile that did not understand. Begin. The simulation began and Commander attacked immediately. His 90 ships moved forward in a perfect formation, a wall of firepower designed to crush anything in its path. This was how the Dominion always fought. Overwhelming force, direct assault, total destruction. Did not try to stop him. Instead, she gave a single command, and her 30 ships scattered like leaves in the wind. They broke apart into tiny groups, 2 ships here, 3 ships there, and vanished into the swirling gases of the nebula. His formation reached the center of the battlefield. His sensors swept the area, searching for targets. He found nothing. Clever, he muttered. She's using the nebula's interference to hide, but hiding is not winning. He ordered his fleet to spread out and hunt. His 90 ships divided into search groups, moving through the nebula like wolves searching for prey. In the observation area, watched with wide eyes. Beside him, a cadet laughed. She's running away, the alien said. The human is a coward. Said nothing. He was watching his face on the display screen. She did not look scared. She did not look worried. She looked like someone playing a game she had played 1,000 times before. The first hour passed. Ships found nothing. The nebula was vast, and the electromagnetic interference made sensors almost useless. His captains reported seeing shadows, ghost signals, echoes that might be ships or might be nothing. Then the first attack came. 3 of ships appeared suddenly behind a Dominion supply vessel. They fired everything they had in a single devastating attack, and the supply ship exploded. Before warships could respond, the 3 attackers had vanished back into the nebula. Impossible, growled. How did they get behind us? He ordered ships to protect the supply vessels. But he had many supply ships, and protecting them all meant spreading his forces even thinner. 20 minutes later, another attack. This time, 2 of ships destroyed a communication relay, a small satellite that helps fleet coordinate. Without it, an entire section of his fleet lost contact with the others. Then another attack, and another. never struck at the warships directly. She struck at the things that supported them: fuel ships, supply carriers, communication relays, medical vessels. Each target was small and seemed unimportant, but each loss made fleet a little weaker, a little slower, a little more confused. "She's not fighting a battle," the station commander observed quietly. "She's fighting a war." In the simulation room's face had changed. The cruel amusement was gone. In its place was something darker, frustration and the beginning of anger. "Stop hiding," he roared at the display. "Face me, fight me directly." His voice came through the communication channel, calm and quiet. "Why would I do that, Commander?" Slammed his fist against his control panel. "Because that is how war is fought, with honor, with courage." "No," replied. "That is how you fight war. I fight differently." The second hour passed. By now had lost 12 ships, not to direct combat but to the endless small attacks that came from nowhere and disappeared into nothing. His fleet was frustrated and tired. His captains were arguing with each other. His formation had fallen apart as ships chased shadows through the nebula. Had lost 4 ships. Each loss hurt. Her fleet was small and she could not afford to lose many. But she did not try to save every ship. She traded them for damage to his fleet, and always the trade was in her favor. In the observation area, the mood had changed. The cadet who had called a coward was now silent, watching with narrowed eyes. The students were calculating, their crystal bodies flickering with complex mathematics. Even the hollow had stopped their constant clicking to watch in silence. "She's not trying to destroy his fleet," a student said slowly. "She's trying to exhaust it." "Death by 1,000 cuts," whispered. It was an old human expression. He had never really understood it until now. The third hour began and changed his strategy. He pulled his fleet together into a tight formation, protecting his supply ships and communication relays. If wanted to attack, she would have to attack the whole fleet at once. Did not attack, she waited. His fleet sat in the center of the nebula, burning fuel, using supplies, unable to move forward or find the enemy. Every hour they waited, they grew weaker. But if they spread out to search, they became vulnerable again. "She's forcing him to choose," the station commander said. "Stay together and waste resources, or spread out and die. There is no good option." Finally, ordered an advance. His fleet moved toward the edge of the nebula, hopping to escape the interference and use their superior sensors, but had predicted this. Her ships were waiting. They attacked from 6 directions at once. Small groups of 2 or 3 ships, striking at the edges of formation, destroying damaged vessels and retreating before the main fleet could respond. It was chaos, beautiful, terrible chaos that could not control. "This is not war," shouted. This is. "This is how humans fight," said quietly. "When we cannot win through strength, we win through time. When we cannot win through power, we win through patience. We make you fight our war, not yours." The 4th hour, the 5th, his fleet was bleeding. Ship after ship fell to the endless attacks. His captains were exhausted. His crews were making mistakes. His formation was falling apart. And still ships came, like ghosts, like shadows, like nightmares that would not end. In the observation area, no one spoke. They were watching something they had never seen before, something that was not in any textbook, any doctrine, any military academy lesson. They were watching a species reveal its true nature. Humans were not strong. Humans were not fast. Humans did not have superior technology or ancient wisdom or overwhelming numbers. But humans had something else, something that the galaxy had not understood until now. Humans did not give up. Humans did not stop. Humans kept fighting, kept adapting, kept finding new ways to win when all the old ways had failed. The 6th hour ended. Fleet was down to 31 ships. Fleet was down to 19. By all traditional measurements, the battle should continue, but everyone in the room knew the truth. Had lost. His remaining ships were damaged and low on fuel. His crews were exhausted. His formations were broken. Even if he destroyed every remaining ship in his fleet, his own fleet would be too weak to accomplish anything. He had won the battle on paper but lost the war in reality. Gave one final order. Her 19 ships appeared from the nebula, surrounding his flagship from every direction. They did not fire. They did not need to. "Checkmate, Commander," she said. Stared at the display. His clawed hands gripped the control panel so hard that the metal bent. His yellow eyes burned with an emotion that might have been rage, or might have been something else entirely. "This is not possible," he whispered. "I have never lost, never." "There is always a first time," replied. Her voice was not mocking or triumphant. It was simply calm. "The battle is over, Commander. Do you surrender or do we continue?" The simulation room was completely silent. Everyone waited for a response. Slowly, the great commander released his grip on the control panel. He looked at its face on the display screen, this small, quiet human who had done what no one else had ever done. "I surrender," he said. The words seemed to cause him physical pain. The simulation ended. The holographic display faded. In the observation area, someone began to clap, then another person, then another. Sat at her control station, her hands still resting calmly on the controls. She did not smile or celebrate. She simply sat there, looking at the empty space where the nebula had been. She had won, but she knew that this was only the beginning. The simulation room emptied slowly. Cadets filed out in silence, their minds trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Officers whispered to each other in shocked voices. The station commander had already left to send a report to the Confederation Council, but remained at her control station, and commander remained at his. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then stood. He walked around the central display, his boots clicking against the metal floor in the sudden quiet. He stopped in front of, looking down at her with those yellow serpent eyes. "Stand up," he said. Stood, the top of her head barely reached his chest. She looked up at him without fear. "How?" asked. His voice was different now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been genuine curiosity. "Those tactics are not taught in any academy. That strategy is not in any textbook. Where did you learn to fight like that?" "From history," replied. "Human history." "Explain." Was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "Earth has a long history of war," she said. "Thousands of years of fighting. And in that history, there are many examples of small forces defeating large ones. We learned that strength is not everything. Sometimes the smaller side wins because they are more patient. Sometimes they win because they are willing to fight in ways the larger side considers wrong or dishonorable." His eyes narrowed. The larger side considers these tactics dishonorable because they are dishonorable. "Perhaps," said, "but dishonor does not matter to the dead. Victory matters. Survival matters. My ancestors survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and the empty darkness between stars. They did not survive by fighting fair. They survived by fighting smart." The door to the simulation room opened. Rushed in, his face bright with excitement. "You did it, you actually." He stopped when he saw Commander standing in front of her. Fear crossed his face, and he took a step backward. But did not look angry, he looked thoughtful. "Your species has been part of the Confederation for only 12 years, he said slowly. "In that time, you have been dismissed as primitives, curiosities, a young species with nothing to offer but enthusiasm." "Yes," agreed. "That is what people believe." "I believed it," admitted. "I came here to prove it, to show everyone that humans are weak, that they do not belong among the elder species." He paused and something changed in his posture. The aggressive stance relaxed. His head tilted slightly, a gesture of respect among his people. "I was wrong," he said. His mouth fell open. In the doorway, other cadets who had been listening gasped. "You were wrong," repeated. "I have fought many enemies," said. "The who rely on strength, the who rely on mathematics, the hollow who rely on speed. I have defeated them all because I understood them. I knew how they would fight and I was prepared." He looked down at with new eyes, not the dismissive gaze of a predator looking at prey, but the measuring gaze of one warrior looking at another. "I did not understand you," he continued. "I expected you to fight like the species I know. You did not. You fought like nothing I have ever seen. You were patient when I expected aggression. You were invisible when I expected confrontation. You attacked my weakness when I expected you to challenge my strength." "That is the human way," said quietly. "We cannot be the strongest or the fastest so we must be the most adaptable. We must find new ways when old ways fail." Nodded slowly, "And that is what makes you dangerous." The word hung in the air. Dangerous. Coming from Commander, it was the highest compliment he could give. "I underestimated your species," he said. "I will not make that mistake again, and I suspect that many others in this galaxy have made the same mistake." He turned and walked toward the door. The cadets in the hallway scrambled to get out of his way. At the doorway, he stopped and looked back at. "What is your name, human?" "I will remember it." He paused. "And I will warn others to remember it as well." Then he was gone, his dark form disappearing down the corridor. Rushed to his side. "Did that just happen? Did Commander just compliment you?" "I think so," said. She felt strange, hollow, and full at the same time. The battle had taken more from her than she had realized. Other cadets began to enter the simulation room. Not just humans, hollow, and a dozen other species. They looked at with expressions she had never seen before. A cadet, the same one who had called her a coward, stepped forward. He was enormous, towering over her like a mountain over a stone. Slowly, deliberately, he crossed his upper arms over his chest and bowed his head. It was the gesture of respect. Had seen teachers and commanders receive it, but never a student, never a human. "That was well fought," they said. His voice was rough, like he was not used to giving compliments. "You brought honor to your species today." Before could respond, a student approached. Her crystal body pulsed with complex lights. "I have analyzed the battle 347 times," she said. "I cannot find a single mathematical model that predicted your strategy. You fought in a way that our equations cannot describe." "Sometimes math isn't enough," said. There was silence for a moment, processing this statement. Then she said something that shocked everyone in the room. "Perhaps you are right. I will need to study this further." Admitting that mathematics might not be enough. It was like admitting that strength might not be everything. It was unheard of. More cadets came. They asked questions. They offered congratulations. They looked at with new eyes, not as an inferior, not as a curiosity, but as an equal, maybe more than an equal. But found herself looking past them toward the door. She was thinking about what it said, about being dangerous, about being remembered. Finally managed to push through the crowd. "Are you okay? You look tired." "I am tired," she admitted, "but I'm also thinking." "About what?" "About what comes next." She looked at her friend, and for a moment the calm mask slipped again. He saw exhaustion underneath, but also determination. This was just one battle, one simulation. Nothing has really changed yet. "Are you kidding? Everything has changed. You beat Commander, the whole station is talking about it." "Today they talk," said. "Tomorrow they might forget. If we want humans to be respected, truly respected, this has to be the beginning, not the end." She walked toward the door, and the crowd parted to let her through. In the corridor, officers and teachers who had never noticed her before now nodded respectfully as she passed. But barely saw them. She was already thinking about the future, about the battles to come, about the long, patient war that her species would have to fight to earn their place among the stars. She had shown the galaxy what one human could do. Now she had to help show them what all humans could do. Behind her watched her go. He had known for 2 years. He had thought he understood her, quiet, shy, preferring to stay invisible. Now he realized something else. Had never been hiding. She had been waiting, preparing, getting ready for exactly this moment. And now that the moment had come, she was already looking ahead to the next one. That night, recordings of the battle spread across the station's network. By morning, they had spread to other stations. By the end of the week, they had reached a dozen worlds. Humans across the Confederation watched the small girl with black hair defeat the legendary commander. They watched her patience, her cunning, her refusal to fight on anyone's terms but her own. And for the first time since humanity had joined the galaxy, they began to feel something new. Pride. 3 months passed after the battle that changed everything. Returned to her seat in the back row of classroom 7B, she still took notes. She still rarely raised her hand. From the outside, she looked exactly the same as before. But everything around her had changed. The Confederation Council had requested the battle recordings for official study. Military academies across 12 systems had added the Battle of Nebula simulation to their advanced curriculum, not the historical version, but S version. Officers who had commanded fleets for decades were now studying the tactics of a 19-year-old human girl. Commander had returned to the Dominion fleet, but before he left, he had done something unprecedented. He had written a formal recommendation letter for the first time he had ever recommended anyone from outside his own species. The letter said simply, "Watch this one. She will change the way war is fought." Humans across the Confederation walked a little taller now. They spoke a little louder. When aliens dismissed them as primitives, they smiled instead of looking away. They had proof now, proof that humans could match the elder species. Proof that they belonged. But the most important changes were the small ones. In the cafeteria, cadets now nodded to her as she passed. In the corridors, students asked her opinion on tactical problems. In the simulation rooms, cadets from a dozen species requested to train with her. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer ignored. For the first time since humans had joined the galaxy, one of them was genuinely respected. It should have felt like victory. Sometimes it did, but mostly felt the weight of responsibility. One evening, she sat on the observation deck, watching the stars through the massive window. Earth's sun was out there somewhere, a yellow dot among billions of others. Her grandmother was on Earth, probably sleeping now, not knowing that her granddaughter had become famous across the galaxy. Found her there, as he often did. "The final rankings came out today," he said, sitting down beside her. "You're number 1 in the class. First time a human has ever held the top spot." "I said. "You don't sound happy about it." Was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Do you know why I really volunteered to fight?" Shook his head. "It wasn't about proving myself," she said. "It wasn't even about proving that humans are intelligent. It was about changing a story." "A story?" "The story the galaxy tells about us." Turned to look at her friend. "For 12 years the story has been that humans are new, weak, primitive. Children playing in a world of adults. That story shaped how everyone saw us. It shaped how we saw ourselves." She looked back at the stars. "I wanted to change the story. I wanted to show that humans are not children waiting to grow up. We are something new, something different, something the galaxy has never seen before." "Considered this, and you did, you changed the story." "I started to change it," corrected. "But a story is not changed by one battle. It is changed by 1,000 battles, 1,000 moments, 1,000 choices. Every human in this galaxy is writing the story now. What they do, how they act, who they become, it all matters." She stood and walked closer to the window. Her reflection looked back at her, a small figure against the vast darkness of space. "We are the first generation," she said softly. "The first humans to walk among the stars. Everything we do will be remembered. Every success will lift those who come after us. Every failure will be used against them." "That's a lot of pressure," said. "Yes," smiled slightly. "But our ancestors felt the same pressure. They were the first to cross oceans, the first to climb mountains, the first to leave Earth's atmosphere. They did not stop because it was hard. They kept going because it was necessary." She turned back to face. "We are their children, and we will not fail them." The door to the observation deck opened, and entered the other two human cadets from their class. Behind them came more people, human officers, human engineers, human scientists. All of them had come to station Orion 7 for the same reason. They had heard about victory and wanted to meet her. "We're interrupting," said apologetically. "No," said, "please join us." They gathered around the window, 20 humans looking out at the stars. Some were young, some were old. Some had been in space for years, others had just arrived. But they all had the same look in their eyes, the look of people who had just discovered something important. One of the officers stepped forward. His name was Captain Park, commander of a small patrol vessel. "Miss," he said, "I've been serving in the Confederation fleet for 8 years. In all that time, I've never been promoted past captain. They said humans weren't ready for higher positions. They said we didn't have the experience." He paused, emotion crossing his face. "After your battle, things have changed. 3 of my human officers have been offered promotions. 2 human scientists have been invited to join the Academy of Sciences. A human engineer has been accepted into the Shipbuilders Guild." "That's wonderful," said. "It's because of you," Captain Park said. "You showed them what we could do. You opened doors that were closed for 12 years. Shook her head slowly. "I showed them what one human could do in one moment. You, all of you, will show them what humans can do every day. That matters more." She looked at each face in the room. "We are not special because we won one battle. We are special because we do not stop. We adapt, we learn, we grow, we survive. That is our gift. That is what we offer to the galaxy." "And what does the galaxy offer us?" someone asked. Turned back to the window. The stars seemed to pulse with cold fire, billions of them, each one a sun with planets of its own. So much space, so much unknown. "A challenge," she said. "The greatest challenge any species has ever faced. We are surrounded by civilizations that are older, stronger, and more advanced than us. They have been walking among the stars while we were still learning to write. They have conquered entire galaxies while we were fighting over pieces of land on a single world." She placed her hand against the cold glass of the window. "We should not exist. By all logic, we should have been conquered or absorbed or forgotten. But we are still here. We are still fighting. And now, finally, they are beginning to understand what that means." The room was silent. Everyone was watching her, this small girl who had become something larger than herself. "My grandmother used to tell me a story," continued, "about a tiger and a rabbit. The tiger was strong and fast. The rabbit was small and weak. The tiger chased the rabbit across mountains and rivers, through forests and fields. But no matter how long the tiger chased, it could never catch the rabbit." "Why not?" asked. "Because the tiger was running for its dinner," said, "but the rabbit was running for its life." She turned to face them one final time. "The galaxy is the tiger. Humanity is the rabbit. They fight for power, for territory, for dominance. We fight because we have no choice. We fight because everything we are, everything we will ever be, depends on us winning." Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "That is why we will survive. That is why we will grow. That is why someday the galaxy will look at us not as children but as equals." She looked back at the stars, countless points of light against the infinite darkness. "They thought we were a footnote," she said. "Now they know we are a chapter, and we are just getting started." Outside the window, the universe continued to turn. Stars were born and died. Civilizations rose and fell. History moved forward as it always did, carrying everything with it. But in that small observation room on that small station, something had changed. A species had taken its first real step into the galaxy, not as children, not as visitors, as participants in the great story of the universe. And the quiet girl who never raised her hand stood at the window and watched the stars burn. She had a feeling she would be watching them for a very long time. But that was okay. Humans, after all, were patient. They had learned to wait. And they had learned to win.